artists. One thing I am involved in is licensing. And if you don't know what licensing is, like, when you watch a TV show or a movie, you hear a song being played. Well, that's for an artist, and that artist is receiving royalties from that placement. So.
I don't mean to interrupt. That's still adding information, but I meant, like, do you have like a calendar right now, any of the people on the panel, of upcoming events? Like, what things specifically do we have in the pipeline? Anything? Anybody up?
I wouldn't necessarily say, because I heard you say, is there like a head figure that kind of like spearheads a movement?
Yeah. Is there anybody around here that's maybe putting together a lot of hip hop based events beyond concerts?
Oh yeah,
things like this.
Yeah, there's plenty of people that book shows. I mean, I think everybody up here on this panel has booked their own shows. J. Ross had a monthly event at Double Happiness, but if you mean like a place where artists just meet to network, to network and do business with each other, no, because there isn't the epicenter here, and that's like the problem that we're like kind of addressing today.
Okay.
Because there is no common ground. Now, back in the '90s, I'm quite sure J. Ross could tell you, they had the Groove Shack. The Groove Shack was like where everybody could go. I missed it. It was on High Street. I missed the Groove Shack era. I'm from what they call the Shortstop era. I used to go to a place on High and Third called the Shortstop, and that's where most of like the young gunners would come, but we would come to battle each other, not necessarily figure out the business of music. We just came there to just really just show off, let the lion roar a couple times, and then get out of here. And a lot of us, we all come from different sections of town. I mean, me and Speak grew up together. I've been knowing Dominique for 10, 12 years, since high school. Soup has been my peer for many a years, but we all came from different pockets of where we made music and who we dealt with to make the music. So your answer to that question is no, there isn't a place where somebody can like directly network with the hip hop community. But I think you might have something there with that idea.
Can I add on? As someone who's been on the Columbus scene, it might be 20 years now. That's a void. We don't have something like that in the community right now, but it is something that we've been talking about, something that we've been working on. But I think it's kind of like to what Ness said, there isn't like you can go south and not know who the North MCs are, you can go north and not know who the South MCs are. That's part of the issue, and that's something that we've been working on and we're trying to work on, but it's taken a lot of time, and I'll be honest with you, it's not a very easy task.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all your answers right now. I don't want to steal the mic. Somebody else might have a question, but I do want to ask. I come from Springfield, Ohio, and I just kind of helped my friend. She's put together maybe like a little model workshop, and I went through a similar thing, putting together panels and concerts and networking with MCs in my city, and we did a pretty good job of getting together the last few years. I used to stay in Columbus, and I'm just now moving back up. So do y'all all have like business cards or some type of way you can write down real quick, some type of contact information? I got a friend that's about to come pick me up. I got to roll out. I can't stay. But I really do want to get in touch with you.
Well, but right before you go, though, for your previous question, another female rapper here in Columbus, her name is Diggy Dolce. She just started an event. It's a monthly event. It's called Bars Meets Beats.
Okay.
It's like the third Sunday of every month at Scarlet and Gray. It's on campus, and it's where producers and artists can meet up with each other. I haven't been to one just yet, so I don't really know the flow of it. I don't know if it's like a Groove Shack or a Bernie's or Shortstop, because I came up in the Shortstop era too. Like I really wasn't even battling at Shortstop. No, I wasn't battling there, but I definitely was rapping Capacity 2, Stars, Capacity's now Transit Arts. That's I can't remember who heads it, but she
BHB
has
is over there
BHB, but Jackie, like I came up through them, and Transit Arts is still around. It's still on Main Street, right? Yeah, the Central Community House, hip hop for the youth, dancing, rapping, DJing. So, and one person you definitely should look up is DJ BHB. Like, BHB?
I'm acquainted with DJ.
Okay, yeah, he does a hip hop expo every year. He's been doing it for 20 years. Yeah. Probably the longest running hip hop show, maybe in America. I'm not sure. I know definitely in the Midwest.
We got 2x2 Fest coming up too, right?
Right. That's in. The hip hop BHBs, let's
That's
see, that
in
was
March.
March. Yeah,
That's in
and
March
then
of
2 by
every
2
year.
is next month. This is the second year of 2 by 2.
Right.
So
Did y'all do Ream Fest this year in Springfield?
You said Ream Fest?
Ream Fest.
Ream Fest, I don't think it happened this past year. No. What, this year? They usually happen in July. He might be having. I haven't heard anything of Ream Fest
I'll
yet.
see y'all soon down there.
I don't want to hog this up. I definitely want to get in touch with the brother over here on the. I teach hip hop too to elementary school kids. I need to get your contact information. I gotta leave. Anybody else got a question?
Peace. My name is Michael, and I just wanted to hear what everybody's opinion on the panel is about today's artists in the role of social justice movements.
Hey, Mike, I'm sorry. Is it possible you could repeat that for me?
Yeah, what do you think the role of a hip hop artist in today's social justice movements is?
That's a great question. I'm a person, I'm pretty. People would consider me pretty active. A lot of my content, is pretty. Okay, I see you in the back. Okay, I'm over here like, yeah, but you over here. So I put it like this, and there may be differing opinions, but today's artists, it depends. Art can be social justice, art can be engaging in social justice, right? It could be engaging in social justice through the actual song or the actual content, right? But the main purpose of art is self-expression, right? Art gets co-opted for other purposes. So, but art in and of itself is just art. So, if I have a verse, there's no mandate for me to lend that verse to anything other than my own self-expression. I think people want artists to be more engaged in, like social justice, but before your art can be engaged, you have to be engaged as a person in social justice. So when you look at a Nina Simone, these are not people that were necessarily making like activism songs. It was like they were already activists. Like Harry Belafonte was already an activist, so his music just spoke to where he was at personally. Artists are where they at personally. If you a street dude, that's where you're at, and your music is going to reflect that reality. You know what I mean? I don't feel like you necessarily have to go and march and protest. I personally believe, people should influence in the way they can, but it's in the way they can. A lot of people do a lot of great things for their community. A lot of people do a lot of great things for their local community. A lot of artists do things that never hit the news. It's never heard of.
Indeed.
So I think you got to start the conversation there, which, is as a person, how do you engage in social justice? And on the real, I think a lot of the music engages in a form of social justice, though people don't process it like that. So if I'm out here talking about how I'm living and what I'm doing and what these cops are doing to me and what, is happening from being young and black in America, you don't hear that because you only see it in the context of somebody dancing. But when you actually go in and see like, well, what is this guy talking about? He's lifting his voice, or she's lifting her voice from the space that they're in and kind of addressing what's happening on that level way before the media picks it up, way before a marcher picks it up. I can almost guarantee you that hip hop broadcasted the issue in the streets and in the community first. So that's my opinion.
Okay. And that's a great point. And I want to add to that, just the main thing I think I want to add, and I think a lot of people forget that the hip hop and the music that you hear on the radio or that you see on TV or that's the popular music, it's not the only hip hop being created. Agreed? So I think that's one of the things when people say, does hip hop address social justice or whatever, there's plenty of it that does. It just doesn't get on the radio. You see what I'm saying? And that's just because the powers that be are interested in making what? All right, so that's the bottom line, and that's all that matters. But there's plenty of hip hop that addresses every social justice issue that you can think of. I mean, I can't even think of all the people off the top, but so I guess the best thing to do is to do your research And that's for anybody who's really unfamiliar with hip hop or any type of genre or culture. Do your research and check it out for yourself, because you'll see that hip hop has many levels, and you only get a surface when you turn on the radio or turn on MTV. Oh, okay.
Something else that I wanted to add on, me and one of my artists, we were reflecting as far as that topic is concerned, and we were comparing two popular artists, Kendrick Lamar and Drake as well. And one thing that I had to bring to his attention, a lot of people would expect someone of the African American culture like Drake to comment on certain things that's going on in society. Well, to a certain extent, in my opinion, I feel that that's possibly never going to happen with someone like Drake, because you have to take in consideration he's from Canada. So him speaking on things that's going on in USA and in New York City and in Atlanta and Florida or what have you, he goes back home to another country at the end of the day. He comes here to, create a financial situation, and he actually has a home back there. His home here is only for the convenience of when he's on tour and things like that. So it really just, going back to what Roy said, it really just depends on what type of artists we're talking here, even where they're from, and what their social background is to begin with, and how important that is to them, if that's even something worth commenting on when they've been making a certain type of music to make them successful to begin with, I definitely think, I know there's things he can do and there's people he can move, there's situations. He has a crazy influence. And I think that's what frustrates some people that are fans of hip hop and fans of him. They're like, hey man, if you, not him, if you with your voice could speak on this, you would possibly make that big of a difference. But some people really, you have the choice. It has courage, and some people really have the choice, and they choose. They're like, nah, I see that's going on, but that ain't gonna be for me. Right. Absolutely. And I hope that time does.
It's like I said, it's like Speak said though. It's all about where a person is at in their personal life. I mean, you can't talk about fighting a good fight if you've never done it. They don't know. You know what I mean? Some people, all they know is selling drugs. So, and hip hop, like, mind you, like, the culture of hip hop has always been about taking negatives and turning them into positives. It started out with kids that couldn't afford record players, and they figured out a way to manipulate theirs to be able to cut and scratch a record simply because they wanted to feel better and get away from the social injustices. That's how it started. It started so we could party and feel good about ourselves again.
Absolutely.
Because we were tired of going to work and being underpaid. We were tired of not being able to get jobs. We were tired of living on top of each other in project housing. So it was just like, this was our only form. So they'll throw their speakers out the window, bring them all the way down, and somebody would be DJing from their living room to make the block feel good about themselves, and it'd be a good day out there. I mean, addressing social injustice is key, but I think artistically, it doesn't matter as much if you do not believe in the words that you're saying. It's not even going to come across as good. So even if Drake gave us a song where he was talking about social injustice, are you going to play that record if he doesn't sing the same way? Like, that's like, they're kind of thinking about how they take care of themselves at the end of the day so that way they can take care of the world. I don't necessarily agree with it all the time because I'm active, but I understand that there is a difference, and that if you're not right with yourself, you can't really talk about something that you don't know about. You can't speak on it.
And then that goes just into emceeing alone. A lot of people forget the fact that hip-hop itself is like an umbrella, and under hip-hop, you have break dancing, which is a form of dancing and expressing yourself physically. You have graffiti, which is a form of art and actually creating images on walls, murals, what have you. You have turntablism. There's different elements of it. A lot of people think as soon as hip hop, it's rappity rapping, words rhyming and things like that. It's so many other different levels of it. And a lot of times people forget that. So just in fashion alone, A$AP Rocky, he's what did he just became the ambassador of Dior, and it's been on the cover of Vanity Fair. So hip hop is integrated in so many other ways versus just words rhyming and things like that to begin with. A lot of people forget that. Question.
Yeah, hello? Yeah.
Hello?
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, as far as the... Hello? Scotty. Hi, everybody. I want to back to before I start, J. Raw's point about the radio. Google the 1996 Telecommunications Act and what that did to radio and how local radio really suffered as a result of it. Not just local radio, black radio, but that's another thing. And I wanted to say, what are you guys doing in terms of like spreading the history of Columbus hip hop to like the younger generation? Because I just turned 30 not so long ago, and I remember when I was a freshman in high school when I heard Black Star, Most Different to Live Kweli, or Black Star, and a couple years ago, and like after that, like I didn't realize that J. Rawls produced a number of songs on that album that I heard on the Essence of Hip Hop, and you know, like I don't know if I talk to young kids and they don't know the history of like what megahertz means in Columbus hip hop history and how they were able to be the first Columbus hip hop artists to actually get played outside of Columbus. They don't know the history of Groove Shack and what that meant to so many artists coming up in the 90s. They don't know the history of like so many things that went down in Columbus hip hop, and you know you have to tell them. So is there any like outlet that you're giving the younger generations of rappers, artists, what Columbus hip hop did, whatnot?
Well, shoot, Ross actually you teach a class, don't you?
Yeah.
I was gonna wait, but yeah, I teach the culture of hip hop. I teach music business. I teach music publishing, copyrights and royalties at Tiffin University, and I'm also at Marion Franklin and East High School. So we're out there. We're teaching, but you know, it takes a village, a nation. But I mean, I think you know there's a lot going on out there. But you have to seek it out too. That's part of it. You know, they mentioned BHB and Transit Arts. That's a wonderful way to find out culture and that kind of thing. So it's out there, and I think everybody here is a part of it. Anybody
else? In short, I think it just basically starts with people just remembering what inspired them, what got them involved, and to pass that message on. You know, I could speak about quote unquote OGs in my situation when I came into Corey Favors sitting right behind you. You know, that's where I learned to get my LLC together and to get a logo together for my company and things like that. So it's just very important just to people that got you influenced and got you involved as far as artists. If you were asking about artists and upcoming artists, just to let them know who got you into this and who helped you get your things together and just kind of pass that information on. So I don't really think, other than Ross, of course, there's really no informational type, informative type of situation or a class or anything like directly in Columbus, Ohio, where like, hey, come here and get your history. But I think it is important for the people that have acquired some type of success to have a story to tell and to be willing to tell their story at all time to inspire others coming up that they see the same light in. So.
Oh yeah, one last thing, like if anybody doesn't know, one group that I almost forgot to say, and this is what Bernie's meant to hip hop culture in Columbus. Like, when we lost with that, there was Hip Hop Sunday Nights. If anybody doesn't remember, you know, Hip Hop Sunday Nights. And one group that I can remember that's near and dear is Spitball, because we lost two legends like years ago. Camus Tao, DJ Prism, rest in peace. They're not here with us anymore. But you know, you can ask any of these people, they can tell you. So.
Yeah. So on the history as well, I think history is a challenge. Period. Right. You know, it's hard for, you know, younger generations on any level of anything to always want to tap into the history, you know, of what they do. I don't think it's necessarily unique to Columbus, but I think that, you know, there was a film that came out, right? Somebody shot a film? Who shot that film? The Columbus, yeah, Paul shot something. So it's stuff out there where people have tried to document, you know, in their own way. I'm heavy on, you know, documentation, man, but I think it would be dope to see what, you know, a couple people could get together and maybe actually come out with a document, you know what I mean?
some type of official, document. But those are like, forward-thinking conversations that, document history is so good. But a lot of the tradition that comes through music is an oral one. It's like you just talk to people and they just say, yeah, that's my guy, or, and those stories kind of get told. But it'd be interesting to explore other ways to create and preserve history.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that one thing that we should do as artists is to engage the youth as well. Like there's definitely a huge gap, and don't get me wrong. Like I honestly do feel like to a certain extent that youth is wasted on the young, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're not engaging with them, and that's why like I don't actually have like a class or anything like that, but I use social media personally to kind of stay up on what's going on in Columbus and going out to shows and checking out artists and building with artists and try to give advice, whatever the conversation brings. So that's one thing that I've been doing lately, but I do want to get to a position to where I could possibly teach a class or maybe be a part of a documentary that teaches Columbus history. Like I feel like it's so important to bridge that gap because the youth, they are the future, and a lot of times the youth feels alienated and we alienate them. So, yeah.
It's a good question.
Great question.
It's kind of a tricky question too because hip hop is actually the only culture that puts an age cap on talent.
That is a great point.
It's like the only culture that's like, oh, you 30 now? You old, get out of here. But the funny thing about it is all the people that they stream and buy records from are 28 plus. All of them. Jay-Z's pushing 40. Rick Ross, he's pushing 50.
Yeah,
E40 just got a gold record. He's 49 years old. Drake is pushing 30. Kendrick Lamar's pushing 30.
Too Short just did a show here. How old is Too Short?
Too Short's pushing 50. So it's like, but it's the only culture or the only form of music where the younger generation will put an age cap on your talent. But it's mainly because they're hungry and they don't feel accepted from the older, the ones that's, I always run down on the young homies. Always. Run down means engage them. Pull up, get out, say what's up, give some dap and pounds. Let's go to the store, get some pop, or what y'all doing today. Something as simple as that makes them feel accepted. They go, oh, that's the big homie. He know what's going on out here in these streets. Because a lot of them feel like we don't identify with what's happening to them on the streets, not really knowing that we just went through the same things 5-6 years ago. And we got smart and chose to remove ourselves from that. But the disconnect is a lot of us got older and we went away and we never came back to share the knowledge. So it feel like she said, they feel alienated. It goes to a point where they're like, oh, you old now, you never had it, or they get to talking mess, and then you get this whole like new Columbus thing and new wave thing. And don't get me wrong, the music is good. I'm very aware of almost everything that damn near touches our city streets when it comes to hip hop music and a lot of punk music. But the biggest disconnect is they don't feel like the knowledge was shared. But to be honest, it was a blueprint that we were taught too, because all of our OGs, they got their money or they got their success and they left too and never came back. So it's been like a vicious cycle. It just keeps going back around and around. So like I said, the pull up and run down is very effective. That's what I call it. The pull up and run down is hella effective. And that's really the only way you can give accounts of like historic things that's happened in hip hop. Because on Main Street where I be at, them young boys don't know that Kamuteo is from Maine and Kelton. They don't know that he comes straight from the neighborhood and he was ahead of his time artistically. And to be honest with you, if you tell them that straight out the gate, they're not gonna listen to it. They'll be like, man, this little Uzi Vert was popping. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta kind of know what's going on the streets with them to be able to integrate with what you got going on with yourself. So I make sure that I stay up on what's happening out here in the world, so that way they'll know I ain't no square. You're gonna listen to what I got to say, and it's generally effective. because they look at all of us like squares after you reach a certain age. I don't know what it is about hip hop. Like once you cross the 30 threshold in hip hop, it's like they don't want to buy your records no more unless you're already rich. So
Country music, you can still pop when you 55.
yeah, you could be 60 years old.
Yeah. 7.
Aaron Neville still making records in his 70s, still getting plaques. Let that happen in hip hop. And what's crazy is most of our heroes, I mean, like we said, they're pushing 50 now, and people still bob their head in the club, all slaves to the 808, not knowing that they listen to a man that's technically capped on age and shouldn't be playing his records, but we do. You know, I think that it's more of like a personal thing when they cross people, because the whole local rapper thing is, it's kind of disheartening. You know, they go, oh, I'm not listening to a local rapper because you from here, bruh. But to be honest, that's the best people to listen to, because you can go knock on their door. You can go pull up on them. You can like say, yo, I'm going through something, and somebody actually pull around and help you. But instead they go, oh, no, you not no Jay-Z. You're not a Drake. You're not a Lil Wayne. Why would I listen to you? You know, but why, exactly, why not? Especially when you're dealing with artists that are making real moves, real power moves, and are fortifying their life economically and spiritually and mentally every day and becoming better people because they chose to monetize their lifestyle. You know what I mean? So that's it.
No, my man with the locks been patiently waiting.
I was wanting to get back to the epicenter of hip hop here. Dominic was mentioning earlier the South Side and the West Side. They really don't connect as far as like performing and whatnot. Where do you see it becoming centralized here in Columbus? I feel like Columbus has the mentality of, oh, you work hard here and then you leave. You go to Chicago, you go to New York, you go to LA. But what's going to gravitate all the artists to perform in one particular area, and you know you're going to get that support?
It's funny because you mentioned Chicago, and Chicago's a really interesting place musically, because Chicago doesn't have one record label there. They do not have a front office you can walk into or an A&R that you can give your records to in Chicago. But they still have a music scene, and it's pretty central. You know where to go, whether you do what either or subgenre of rap, it be conscious or what people consider backpack or trap. Everybody has a place to go, but I think that that's because they have great DJs there that break the records. We don't have a lot of DJs that break the records. If you have, I mean, at the end of the day, rappers, most of us aren't going to be able to coexist because everybody has their own vision on how they want to make music artistically. DJs are kind of like the median point of that. Like, yo, I'm going to give you this record. Yo, I'm going to give you this record. If you spin in the club tonight, we play it, and it kind of all gets in a pile. You know what I mean? Radio. I'm not passing blame necessarily. I'm just saying, like, these cities that you named, they all have formulas to how they break their records, and it mostly starts with the relationships between artists and DJs. And I noticed that that's how more people become closer.
I think what it might take is simple situations like today. I could give you a few examples. An example, one of my artists I manage, Ness Words, he pretty much makes, his music is different from a lot of people that's being booked today that you're gonna see on a Bozo stage. In the example, I think it takes different demographics, different audiences of what they came to see to witness something that they normally wouldn't come to and that they will see. I manage a motivational speaker. His name is Trek Manifest. He doesn't use profanity in his music. He actually teaches drug and alcohol prevention for kids. A couple of times I booked him for a couple hardcore, if you would call it hardcore hip hop shows. And there were guys that make street music and things like that. And after the show, they'd be like, hey man, I normally wouldn't even listen to that type of hip hop, man, but he could rap or he dope. And they form a level of respect right then and there. So I think what it's gonna take is situations like what you guys are gonna see this evening, to where there's hip hop acts that normally wouldn't make a certain type of music that are together because it's for a bigger audience, and you see people that you've never thought you would have been a fan of that type of music for it to happen. You know, bigger festivals like Made in America, the same stage you're gonna see a Kid Cudi on, you're gonna see somebody as hardcore as Meek Mill from Philly. You know what I'm saying? And so people that may be a fan of one music may see people that makes another type of music and become a fan of that, if that makes any sense. So that's one way, but then it takes people that are going to put the willpower together, say, hey, we're going to do this festival, and we're going to try to mix these people in. So it takes effort. It takes people putting their hand in a huddle and things like that. But if I could say, that may be one way, because I've seen that work before, and I know for a fact that's going to happen tonight with someone like Ness Words that normally wouldn't be on the bill with people that he's on the bill with tonight. So, thank you.
I think that
You next.
I agree with everything that's definitely been said. When I kind of look at it, from a space perspective, right? You know, from a venue perspective. And then that kind of plays, not to even take the conversation too far left, but that kind of plays into how even something as simple as how a neighborhood is developed, right? So you take a development in a Chicago or a New York or, you know, whatever city, right? What you'll find in just the general layout of the neighborhood is that artists may have a certain kind of access to spaces that suit what they do. You talk about, you know, Bernie's, or you talk about, you know, wherever, that's a venue, right? So when you think about where are the actual spaces that even that kind of thing could be facilitated at, you know what I mean? And if you find that space, can it be facilitated in an organic way where people could just kind of meet up and everybody know this is how we do? Or are you kind of got like the token hip hop night, you know, where we don't really rock with hip hop, but on this day, you know, for an hour, we let people come out. So I'm all about the creation of spaces and flipping spaces into things that could be, you know, a resource for the community. When I was out in Oakland, and my man Rose was out there. Yeah, when I was out there, when you was out there. Yeah. So we was out in the Bay, and that was my first time out there. And somebody had told me a story about an artist in like West Oakland that pretty much did music, and they sold beats, and they took the beats, the money that they made from beats, and they was able to like get like these abandoned buildings out in West Oakland. It's abandoned, right? So it's cheap, right? But they basically turned it into like a spot. So you got this abandoned building that just got flipped into a spot, and they did it with like several properties. Some of them they were just like squatting in, you know what I'm saying? So they were just squatting in there doing it, but out of that space, the culture was able to grow and flourish and you know and go to new heights, you know. So I think when you talk about people getting together, you know, you have to look at the space. I think, you know, Creative Plug is a dope space. A lot of good things happen there. But you can see it, right? So like just like last year at the 2x2 festival, you can see that obviously there's a community out here, you know, because that thing was bodies on bodies on bodies. On the Hip Hop Expo, it's obviously out here, but I think, you know, maybe we should look at how we can carve out more space to do those things and more centralized space. How does an artist do anything downtown right now? How does that happen? You know, you got $1 million condos. You think hip hop just can't go there and just do that legally without getting policed, right? So I'm saying a lot of this stuff plays. You'd be surprised that sometimes a lot of cities, you know, they behind this movement because they know they can make money on it. So they you know, even Dayton had an initiative where they flipped the old bank in Dayton. You know what I'm saying? What's that space? I forget the name of the space, but they flipped the old bank, you know. They got with the owner of the building. It was run down. They turned it into a creative space, and it was. I mean, the vault was still in it and everything, you know. So I think you got to start kind of like thinking on that kind of level, and if you want to see more of those meetups happen.
Great question, man. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
What's your name?
Carolyn.
Nice to meet you, Carolyn.
Nice to meet you, too. I've worked with Bernard Lafayette since 1970, who worked very closely with Martin Luther King. And he's done a lot of training in nonviolence and so on, and recently released a book on Selma. One of his concerns and what's very sad is that this has been one of his concerns that's been ongoing since 1970 and probably even prior to that, are the number of young black African American men that constitute the population of our prisons. And I think it's interesting what you're doing your PhD dissertation on. And when you talk about that you got out, you know, that hip hop was a tool that you used to get out personally. I guess a question I'd like to ask is, what is one thing that each of you personally could do to use your hip hop talent skills beyond that it's a self-expression, as you say, and an important self-expression as far as getting your message across. But what is one thing that each of you personally could do to have an impact on using hip hop to help reduce this ridiculous high percentage, 80-some percent, in the prisons that are young African American men?
With me personally, that's a very great question, first of all. That's a great question.
I'm actually glad that you asked that.
Yeah. One thing that I try to do personally, where I was born and raised at, I was born and raised on the south side of Columbus on Ohio Livingston, and then midway through middle school and high school, I moved 2 streets over to Oakwood and Thurman. The gang community is heavy over there. It's the origin of the Bloods gang here in Columbus. Drug trafficking is high, et cetera, et cetera. Something that I try to encourage a lot of my young guys that I know that does do music in that area is there's ways that you can make money off of music to where you don't have to make money off of other things. Let me show you how to sell your music. Let me show you how if you pack 100 people in a small venue at $10 a pop, that's $1,000 that you didn't have to get doing something else. So I basically try to educate more or less the business aspect of it. And if you are to take your music that you're only doing X, Y, and Z to raise money to be able to support, let me show you how you can make money off of music to where you can alleviate all the other things that you're doing, which may end you somewhere else and you'll never be able to do music again. So me personally, I try to attack it with a business aspect, and I try to have more of an informative approach about it as far as ways you can make money through music, and it could alleviate you making money through other ways. So that's me personally.
I personally, like I said, it's my pull-up and rundown theory once again. I try my best. I work with the 8th grade boys at Johnson Park, and the one thing that it taught me is that a life of service kind of enriches you, and it made me find out that I actually care about what people's dreams are. Oh yeah, to kind of like talk a little bit about it, my main focus with the boys was not about like, you know, you get your grades, you go to college, you know. A lot of these boys that I was mentoring and working with, they come from gangland. They're in gang territory. Most of them were active. Active means that you're actively doing gang activity. You're active. So they were all active, and a lot of them came from homes that was, I wouldn't say broken, but you know, it's a vicious cycle. You know what I'm saying? And the main thing that I could do was get them to think about what they wanted to do with their life. The main thing I can do is just get them to start, even if they was like, I don't know. Well, that's good that you don't know, because not knowing is okay too. And people not knowing where I come from is not considered a good thing. It's like a bad omen to like not know what you want to do with yourself. So we make these ill decisions to look like we know what's up, but we really don't. We're just trying to find ourselves. That was very important to me because I was dealing with teenagers in the most formidable times of their lives, and it's probably going through all of these ranges of emotions. And basically what they are in high school is probably who they're going to be for the next 10 years after high school until they figure out they don't have to be that way anymore, was to just get them to understand that they had options and balance. If you can get somebody to understand that they have options more than just what they see, more than just the D-boy on the corner that just cashed in, or you know, you got to go and go sell you some weed or something to be able to go and buy some food and some Jordans. You get people to focus on their dreams and the direction they want to go, it's almost like I wouldn't say that like the idea of prison is obsolete, but you're too busy thinking about your dreams to be thinking about and how you can achieve them rather than thinking about what you're doing in the streets. And then like with his business approach, it's kind of the same thing. You're teaching somebody how to deal with their money, you're dealing with becoming financially stable, which is a big problem in our communities. Like we don't really learn about money. You know, we don't learn about how to handle money. We don't learn how to do business. So a lot of the problems within our community comes from things that we weren't taught in the house. We wait on school to teach our kids about money. You know, decimal points and percentages and things of this nature. Like most of the time, educational institutions teach our kids this. In our community, we don't show our children what credit is until we're already in debt. We don't show our children how to balance a checkbook until we realize that we actually need one. And then we're too busy worrying about how to manage our own to the point where we can't teach our children. And that whole thing about parents playing catch up and then it falls on the children and they lack that. They need somebody out there that pays attention to just simply what they want to do or what they're feeling that day. If people had a real way to communicate and just talk to each other and say what's really on their mind, most of the problems that exist in the world, even if the propaganda of the school to prison pipeline was in your face, you wouldn't even know it was there because the reinforcement in your community would be so much stronger. The communication would be there, you know, but it's getting people to open up and actually be willing to say, you know, this is what they want to do with their lives, or I just simply don't know. And somebody also be willing to like guide that or just care about it just a little bit. That could easily save a life. Just like a thank you could save somebody's life. So that's how I engage into it.
Like Ross, you know, I'm heavily involved in teaching and education. Last year, I did a project with Champion Middle School, which at the time was either the worst middle school in the state or at least top 5 worst middle schools in the state. I'm thinking it was top 1, but Champion Middle School. Yeah. So I did right. So I did a project at Champion, which one, I live in that neighborhood, so I'm very active, engaged in the King Lincoln district. 2, you know, I went in and the project was centered around using hip hop as a way to engage students on other things like teamwork, like, you know, collaboration, neighborhood history. It was just pretty much using that tool as a way to have like deeper conversations, which is something that I plan on continuing, but this time, you know, I'm gonna have way more people. It was like a pilot, right? So it's just like, let's just see what happens. But after we saw what happened, and my mind was like, man, I gotta get some real people involved, especially like, you know, for the production and the beats. And I think I mentioned that to both of y'all at some point, the potential that I saw from that project. You know, so I mean, I'm heavy on education. You know, I'm just heavy. That's just me. I'm heavy on informing people. I'm heavy on, you know, just giving people knowledge and information. That's something that I just do as a person. Like I said, so my art comes out like that because that's just what I am in my real life. But, you know, in top of the education, man, I have to agree 100,000% with what Soup said as far as business. And, you know, everything is cool. All of that stuff is cool. But, you know, what sustained me was being able to, you know, travel to get some checks, to partner with organizations, you know, to understand, you know, a 1099, to setting up an LLC, you know, all the stuff that, you know, Rawls is teaching. That's the business, because the reality is these kids are in poverty, right? And so even more importantly than keeping them out of jail, you know, I also try to illuminate how first of all, you shouldn't even been born in these conditions. So just the fact that you woke up in this project building and there was a project building and there was a body, I mean, just the fact that you were born here is not an indictment on you, it's more of an indictment on society. So my first rule of engagement is, well, you was basically, a situation was created for you to fail, and so if you find yourself failing, that's probably not your fault, but it is your responsibility, and there's a difference. So it's still your responsibility because it's your life, but I want you to understand that there's some isms that's out here to make sure that you occupy that space instead of the stage, or instead of it's a lot of stuff going on, and so my thing is more of an eye awakening thing, when I did my class, we talked about, business, they didn't know Facebook it was a stock. They didn't know what a stock was. They didn't understand. Yes, everybody. Same thing when I worked at the rec center. I would educate them. Like, everybody making money because you here. You the brokest person in the cycle. Cops making money off you. Judges making money off you. Warden making money off you. Everybody's making money. Lawyer making money off you. If y'all just didn't commit no crime, it would just bankrupt the whole economy. It'd be the whole thing. It would be bankrupt. People would show up to the court and it's like, nobody's here. So understand that you are in that cycle. And like, I think when you get them with that aha moment, and then you do like what Soup said, it's actually giving them some tools now. So now your eyes are open. Now I can give you this licensing or this copyright, or show you that your intellectual property is actually property that you can monetize, and now you can start taking care of yourself and sustain yourself in a way that, that saves your life, and so I'm engaged in all of those things, and I want to get more engaged. So that's what I do.
I'll tell you. One last question. All right. So. Oh man, you had the mic the whole time. I thought you was the mic master. No. I'm actually It's okay if you go over. I'm actually the next workshop, and so like it can be a segue into mine, which I'm going to be talking about. Like, what's your name? My name is Kyle. My stage name is Guante. I'm actually from Minneapolis, okay. So it's really cool hearing how different scenes. I relate into so much of what y'all are talking about, but then it's also a little different just because the cities are different and like demographic, all that stuff. My question was about really specifically. I think it's easy to talk about like in a very general way, like hip hop and social justice and hip hop and like consciousness. But like when we get really specific, I think about some of the stuff that we do in Minnesota and how that might be different from what y'all do in Ohio, especially in an election year. And so like when we talk about activism, it's really important that we talk about that in like a large sense, right? That like activism is more than just voting. It's more than just going to the voting booth and doing the thing once every 4 years or whatever. But it's this whole big spectrum of how we push back, et cetera, et cetera. But in Ohio, in an election year, are there certain things that you're thinking about in terms of how it's not just about what the MC says in a hip hop community, but it's about the spaces that we create and like the access to audiences that we have that like campaigns don't necessarily have? And I'll just a really quick example. In Minnesota, we did a concert series called Hip Hop Against Homophobia because we were having like a referendum to ban same-sex marriage. So we toured all throughout the state to the smaller towns, like 50,000 people, 100,000 people, and brought this message to those cities where the campaigns weren't really getting in. And so being able to reach those audiences made a big difference. Well, I mean, I can't say it made a big difference, but it's something that we try to think about in terms of intentionality. So I don't know if that's something that's on your minds right now in 2016, in an election year, if you're thinking about your, not just hip hop, but like your community and your scene and how that might be able to have an impact on Ohio as a swing state.
Can I say one thing real quick? Okay, I ain't gonna say that. Right. So basically, it goes back to the diversity. Now, there's been vehicles in Ohio. The first vehicle that comes to my mind is somebody like OSA, which is why I'm gonna talk briefly because Ness put in work with them. A lot of activists and a lot of artist activists involved in that space in those situations. I participated. Rest in power, the late great Marshawn McCarroll. The pinnacle of artists. Yeah, give it up for bro, man. BOD. These were things that feed the street. These things are created by artists. So it's not always like, it may not always look like an artistic demonstration, but a lot of stuff that moves through those scenes, or a lot of artists are involved in those things, even if they're not necessarily making like specific content to address a specific issue. Part of it goes back to the education, which I think OSA is working on. You know, there's stuff that gets slid through the Senate and through, you know, Ohio on a regular, right? You know what I mean? There's always a new piece of bill or legislation. So one is just engaging. You know, I think we still have like an education place. You know, even with myself, is like, you know, what does the Senate Bill 97 look like playing out? And that's an Ohio bill, you know, with mandatory minimums for people that, you know, do firearm assaults. But it's like stuff that people didn't even probably for real know about till I just said it. You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean anything. I just was on the email list that shot it to me and I read it. So it wasn't like I was super informed on it. But, you know, we still gotta like get educated around those issues. I myself am not concerned about, you know, presidential. You know, that's Satan is Satan. You know, I don't even feel like people in hip hop would get behind that to even educate. But the issues is probably a space that people can have some conversation on what's happening locally with City of Columbus legislation and how that money is moving. And there's probably a lot of space for people to get and kind of say, you know, expect. But I think too, artists need to lobby, right? You know what I'm saying? So hip hop like need to start approaching the council and having them do stuff on behalf of this community that's gonna kill it at ComFest later on.
I think the first thing is simply, it's real small. Whether it's sports, whether it's health, whether it's politics, create awareness. Everybody's gonna have their own opinion. Everybody's gonna have their own beliefs and things like that. Everybody's gonna have their own preference. The first thing is to create awareness and educate people on what's going on, and then allow you to make your own decision. It might be something that one person you want to vote for is doing differently than the other person. The first step is to create awareness and allow you what's going on, what's your selection, what do you have to choose from. Then after that, you form your own opinion and you make your own decision. And I think that's what a lot of things that goes on in today, personally.
Yeah, it's education is so huge, and obviously hip hop has always had a voice in politics, and you don't really hear about too many events that go on in that regard when it comes to hip hop, especially here. At least I haven't heard of it. Not saying it's not there, but I do think that it's something that's very important that artists here need to take advantage of, is putting together events, spreading awareness, because a lot of people don't know. Like, this year has been very stressful as far as it being an election year on me personally, where I just kind of had to disconnect. And what made me want to disconnect is the fact that nobody wanted to look up what they were, who they wanted to vote for. I'm like, you're gonna vote for whoever you want to vote for, but my thing is like research. Like we have these right here, these little things that we talk on. Like you can Google anything, like you can look up anything. Like that's one of my biggest things. Just do your own research, educate. Like everything is at our fingertips. But I do feel like, you know, hip hop artists, like we definitely need to get more involved with politics.
Hip hop and politics have always kind of, it started out as like a real shaky relationship. In NWA and the White House, and you know, Jerry Curls in the White House, and that's why I'm real happy. Well, it wasn't the start, but yeah, we can go back further, but that was, you know, it's a key turning point. That's why it's important for Kendrick to be doing the rap squat in the White House with Obama. That was a very important picture for the culture. Straight squatted on him. But local issues, I can piggyback off of that all day. You know, I don't really care to hear about who people want to vote on as president. I want to know if you know who your mayor is. Do you know who the representative of the 15th district is? The 12th district. Do you even know that we're sitting in the 15th district? Do you know, like, you know, just small things. But when it starts there, it starts to branch outward. You know, when the mayor first got elected, I asked all the young homies that I knew if they knew who our mayor was. Every last one of them said Mike Coleman. Every last one. It's got to start on your city streets. If you don't know what's growing in your backyard, what's happening on the world's playground kind of doesn't matter. Your sandbox. The way hip hop can actually help and engage that is, I try to let my people see me go and vote. Like, yo, I'm going to go do this. Or I talk a lot about the issues. I get a lot of flack about it too. I get into arguments with the homies all the time. Like, man, you think you know what you talking about? Shut your damn mouth. You know, or man, why you always preaching to us about this politics stuff? But after the anger settles, it always boils down to, thanks a lot, bro, for even putting me on game. And I'm not judgmental about the fact that they might not be educated, because at one point in time, I wasn't either. The only reason why I got educated was because of people like Speak or the OSA, which I helped start up in its very beginning phases. I would have never became that engaged if I didn't, or that active in the community, if I didn't just make a choice and start listening to what was going on. So I wouldn't say that like hip hop can tell you like, yo, Mayor Ginther is your mayor, we gonna keep it player. Like you can't, you know, that's not really what's important. That's not really what's important. But being a visible example of what it is you're doing, being a visible example of like, yo, man, J. Rawls goes and votes, man. Supernatural votes. Man, you see him in the picture with the mayor, you know, I Snapchat myself at the polls, though it's illegal as hell. I don't care. The 15, 16, 17-year-old homies need to see that. So then when they get old enough, they'll know why it's important. Or they're going to at least inquire like, man, you really going to do that, man? You vote for real? Yeah. And then they start asking you why it's important. So I think just being an actual like physical example, because raps is just raps. They just words. You know, it's words at the end of the day. Seeing is more believable than just hearing it on a produced track.
Let me just end it, sum it up, because I know we gotta go. She's looking at us like, listen, for both of y'all's questions, the thing that I was going to say to you, there is a term in hip hop, and it's old school, but there's a term called each one teach one, and that's pretty much the philosophy, the underlying philosophy. Your question is about socioeconomics. It's about poverty. I mean, people are in jail because they don't want to be broke. Your question is I think Ness summed it up really well. You got to start in your own backyard, start at home. Each one teach one. I tell somebody, he spreads the word, and it keeps going. That's the only way it's going to work. Each one teach one.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, the hip hop panel. My friend, Speak Williams, right here. J. Rawls. Yeah. My twin sister with the red glasses.
If any of y'all stand for my set tonight, I'm going to tell y'all right now. Y'all not about to get none of that educated talk y'all had on this. We came to party, we came to turn up.
Thank you guys. Thank you again. Hey, if you think ComFest is awesome and you want to help continue to keep it going. Hey, Marshall. Hey, guys.
Talking about you earlier.
Sorry about your toe.
I was asking about you if I knew.
Important announcement in like a couple minutes when the other guy is like getting ready to go. Just remind the crowd to keep their take their conversations outside.
Okay.
Everybody talking over the workshops kind of
Oh,
stuff. But I
okay.
mean, you know, the people come in, so just remind them.